Greetings. Peace, everyone. Hi, it's Deidre, and I am here again as promised, and it's 420. So, guess what we're going to talk about? We're going to talk about that herb, the weed, the marijuana, the legalization of marijuana. So, before we get into it, just a few housekeeping rules. As usual, I am facing the sun so that you can see me, so I might squint a little bit, and I really can't see you, but that's okay. As long as you can see me, it's fine. Also, there's a little bit of a delay, like 20 seconds. So I'm going to try to get to comments as I see them, as we're going and moving in the chat. But other than that, we're going to get started. And nature's doing its thing. So it's a little bit windy. So we will just go with the flow. So I wanted to talk to everyone today regarding marijuana because legalization has been spreading like wildfire. And I think, in the vein of what I like to do, which is give information, it's important to make sure that people have the right information. And so I'm going to start that by going over, is it legal? That's the question, right? Is it legal? So it's actually one of those rare occasions where we have both a yes and a no. And that's because marijuana is legalized by the state. So it's being legalized on an individual basis based on how the states vote when they have elections, and there's the question in the ballot, and how the voters will vote on a particular issue. And so far, we have the majority of the country has states that have legalized marijuana, but in varying forms. So, first of all, these aspects actually determine the marijuana use. So there's fully legal. There's like mixed, which is a mixture of medicinal or what they call decriminalization, which I'll get into. And then there is fully illegal. So currently, and I had to write this down. So currently, we have 16 states that are fully legal. So that means they actually allow, it is legal for recreational use and medicinal use. And there's also some form of decriminalization. And again, sometimes these also can vary per county or municipality within a given state. So it's important to make sure that you know the laws of the state that you're living in, or even the laws of the states that you travel to. And I'll tell you why. So with the mixed states, there's about 26, and so they vary within that. Some are just medicinal. Some, I think, two are to offer decriminalization, and then within there's a mixture of both. Some have both decriminalization and medicinal, but they may not have recreational use. If they have recreational decriminalization and medicinal, that's what we call the fully legal. And as I said, there's only 16 states so far. And I believe New York, which is near where I am, actually became the 16th state to legalize in these past elections. So there are 6 states where it's actually fully illegal. And I'm going to see if I can remember. I think it's Idaho, Kansas, Alabama, South Carolina, and I think that I named 4. So clearly I'm missing like 2 states. So, but out of that, there's like 6 that are illegal. Oh, Tennessee is one. Yeah, and I think those are the only ones I remember. So I'm missing 1 state, but you can easily look it up. I'll put it in the description box later. And even within those states that offer the mixed or medicinal use, some of them, the medicinal is only CBD oil. So it's really important to know what is legal in your state when it comes to medicinal use. And when you say medicinal, that is marijuana that is given as a prescription. You have to have a prescription in order to use. And then you have to go to designated dispensaries, legally operated dispensaries within your municipality, county, or state to obtain said marijuana. And even with that, so like, for example, in New York, right now, because yes, New York has just fully legalized, but they're still working through regulations, right? And to see how that will roll out. So right now in New York, immediately it is legal for up to 3 ounces of possession, right? That's the recreational use. So if you're walking on the street, and so that's the decriminalization, right? And then for medicinal use, it's right now it's not smoked, so that's going to change. I think that's going to change, but right now medicinal is right now it's edible edible CBD oil, and really non-combustible forms. So there's a difference between legalizing or legal and decriminalization. So for something to be legal, it's removing the prohibitions, but not without regulations, right? Because regulations and the rules, they actually guide how we adhere to a given law. So it's not just like willy nilly, free for all. It's great to smoke marijuana. Well, for those who partake recreationally, maybe so, but there are rules and regulations within you, with which within you have to move so that you can adhere to what the actual law is. And then there's decriminalization. So decriminalization is just removing, and excuse the crying baby in the background if you can hear him or her. Decriminalization is to remove the criminal penalties for possession under a certain amount. And we're talking about marijuana. So when it's legal, it is removing the prohibition, but then there's going to be rules and regulations with which you have to follow in order to be compliant with the law. Decriminalization is removing the criminal penalties for possession, but that possession is it has a cap. And so this is where we actually get into that yes and no part. So remember, I said before, legalization is actually state by state basis. As of now, it is not federally legal. So that means you cannot travel between states with marijuana. It doesn't mean anecdotally that people are not doing it, but they should not be, because you could get in trouble because it is not a legal drug. It's still considered a drug, a Schedule I drug at the federal level. So if you are going to partake, please, like I said, be mindful of the laws of the state that you're in, as well as the state that you are traveling to. And it is wise to not show up at the airport with marijuana, because you could get into a lot of trouble. Um, and it doesn't mean that people are not doing the things that they should not be doing. But if you want to be compliant and at least stay safe, then it's best to not travel with it. Um, so again, federally, it is still illegal because it's considered a Schedule One. It's still considered a Schedule One drug. Excuse me. So this is why it's really important. Again, I'm going to be repeating myself, to know the laws of the state, county, and municipality that you're in. And so this is why it's really important, because New York and New Jersey are really close to one another, especially if you live in the northern part of New Jersey. That's the part that's like the closest to New York City. It's, you can be within 10 minutes to a half hour at the quickest away from, Midtown Manhattan or downtown Manhattan. And so in New Jersey, the limit for possession that is decriminalized is actually 6 ounces. And in New York, it's 3. So you see how you can easily run into a problem when it comes to traveling between cities and states, because they are two different states. Even though we move seamlessly between the two, it's two different states. So this is why traveling between state lines can be a little bit sticky, because it's not legal yet federally. If it's federally legal, then you can move, however. But because things are being passed on a state by state basis, each of the laws are different, depending on the state. So they create the laws that's, best for them and the constituents or voters that live, within those borders. So again, you have to know the boundaries, right? So greetings, sovereign Eads, shalom. Apparently the law, right, the law is for the lawless. So, and laws are broken, but it doesn't mean that they should be. Laws are there for a reason. They're there to be followed, because if not, then what do you have? You run the risk of curses. So moving on. So then we have to think, okay, well, how are we affected by this? So as a person who, like, my, the daytime hours, so my profession is policy and advocacy, specifically in tobacco control. And so a lot of what we talk about is, we understand that marijuana is definitely used as a medicine. And I want to be clear, marijuana is an herb. And so we know that herbs are, used as medicines from the beginning of time. They've been used as medicine. And that now at this point, especially when we're talking about public health and things being evidence-based, we now have a plethora of evidence that shows that it is used and quite effective for people who experience chronic pain. So now what we have to think about is, as we're legalizing, and not just for medicinal use, but for recreational use, how do we make sure that we balance so that we are not um, um, upsetting or displacing laws that have been put in place that are regarding tobacco, which is also smoke, just a different form. Um, how do we make sure that we are not usurping those things and kind of undermining them by legalizing marijuana? And so that means when the rules and regulations are being made, like per state, there's a lot of people that and a lot of agencies that have to put their 2 cents in. So I'll give one example. We can even think about the DMV, right? So in some states, it's the Motor Vehicle Commissions um, the Department of Motor Vehicles, whatever your acronym is, whatever is the agency that deals with licensing and driving, right? And so when we think of driving and people driving under the influence, what does that look like? That means we have to think about what are the dosings, what is the legal amount that a person can have in their system, what is being used to measure, how are we standardizing, or what products or systems or things are we using to measure and standardize what we think is an acceptable amount, which is really difficult, because everyone has a different reaction when it comes to medicine or herbs, and the amount that they get in, because we have different body types, we have different fat content, water, so we have to think about that. And weed is not, or marijuana, whatever name you want to call it, Mary Jane, Sticky Icky, whatever it is not water soluble, and it lives in the fat cells. So someone who's bigger, may not have the same psychoactive experience as someone who is smaller. So, much like alcohol, we have to think about body weight and things like that. So, how are we going to standardize? Quick I guess, like, note, a fact, like Colorado, which has been legal for some time now, they actually did say that they experienced an increase in DUIs when it comes to people driving while high. I think the percentage was like a 48% increase, even though alcohol is still the drug of choice when it comes to breaking the law and drinking and driving. There was still an increase, and 48% is a lot. So this is why, there's a lot of different agencies that have to be involved when it comes to making the rules and regulations for how this is going to be rolled out. And again, there have been some things that were very quickly rolled out, so, which is like the decriminalization. So in New York State, immediately, under 3 ounces and under, there's no criminal penalties. But if you have more than 3 ounces, then that's a different story. So again, know the laws and the rules and regulations of the place where you live or the place where you're going to. Um, so that's like a quick example of, like, how we have to think, like, how does this affect us, when it comes to laws that are in place when it comes to smoking, right? Because smoke is smoke. So when we think of things that are in place in a lot of states and municipalities and areas, and a lot of places, states, municipalities, and areas, there's like tobacco 21, right? So when we think about, or in some places it's tobacco 19, and that means that you have to be either 19 or 21 to purchase tobacco. So what now has to happen is, when we think about recreational use and places and businesses are opening up, a consumer has to be the same age that they allow tobacco use. The consumer has to be that same age, because there has to be, we have to make sure that we have not just parity, but it makes sense, because we're talking about secondhand smoke, thirdhand smoke. It's just a different kind. It's just not tobacco. And so these things are still very present. So we want to make sure, again, like I said, that we are not usurping really good public health policies when it comes to smoke and how people are affected. We want to make sure that we're not usurping public health policies that are already in place. Another example is housing. So where do people, really partake? And especially in a time where we are now, even though we're kind of moving back into the world and we're coming out of confinement and we're stretching our legs. For the most part, a lot of people are still working from home. We do know that a lot of people have lost their jobs. So people are in the homes more. And so where are people smoking? They're probably going to smoke in their homes. So the same way when we talk about smoke-free policies for housing, how does that marijuana smoke travel through the buildings and the ventilations and the piping and the systems? Because, smoke cannot be contained. No matter what kind of smoke it is, it really isn't contained. I'm a testament to that. I had a neighbor who smoked and it came through the kitchen cabinets of all places, like the bottom kitchen cabinets. So it's not something that's really isolated to one unit. So if you have buildings who have opened up or established smoke-free policies, then that means it makes sense for them to add marijuana to that list. Does it now kind of shrink the places where people can go freely smoke? Absolutely. But we have to remember not everyone partakes. Not everyone can do that. And in the same way that cigarettes can trigger asthma, that smoke and that, the substance can also trigger an asthma attack, because the truth is we should not be inhaling anything into our lungs besides oxygen. So that brings me to kind of talking about marijuana use and recreationally. And the truth is, while and this has really shifted over time as I've grown, because I used to be like a staunch, like, they need to legalize it. I'm gonna go with my picket sign and, like stand outside of the courthouse and legalize it. And while that still may be, true, and also as a person who does not partake, I think we have to think about how we look at the difference between medicinal use and recreational use, and really understanding the fact that it is medicine first, right? And if we're using it in a recreational capacity, how much of it is really coping mechanisms? So leading, kind of tying that back to all of the different agencies and whatnot that are being involved, is also like mental health. So the offices of mental health, should be involved. And I believe that is definitely going on in New York City and New York State as they figure out how this works for them. So these are all things and conversations that need to be had. And we haven't even touched upon the racial disparities experienced by brown and black people when it comes to criminalization, when people did used to go to jail a lot for possession or use. And so now there is definitely a push to make sure that when business is open, because this is now going to be like a money maker, so are black and brown people also going to be able to share and partake equally in the benefits of, the revenue and the income that can be made from these things. So I think I'm gonna stop there. Shalom, Sister Kashia. I think I'm gonna stop there because we're definitely going to have a True Health Live podcast about it and kind of go into it a little further. But as the sun is setting, I wanted to make sure I took advantage of the light. That happened really fast, right? So now I know like 6 o'clock is probably not good. We want to make sure we're coming out a little bit faster. Sun never looks like it sets that fast, but that happens so quickly. But anyway. Yes, I just wanted to go over those few things, like, is it legal? The truth is, the answer is yes and no. So just a few things to take away and remember. It is legal on a state by state basis. That's how the legalization has been spreading across the country. There's 16 states currently that are fully legal. There are the majority of the country, the states are a mixture of medicinal only or medicinal and decriminalization. And then there are 6 states remaining that are fully illegal. So this leads into the federal piece. This is why you should not travel between state lines with marijuana, because it is still federally illegal. Again, check the laws of the state that you live in and also the state that you're traveling to. And then we have to remember that second part. We're thinking about, well, how does it affect us? So I gave the example, quick example of how it affects us when we think about like driving. So are we going to have an increase? And the truth is probably. Are we going to have an increase of more people kind of letting loose and letting free and smoking while driving? Probably. we do have evidence that Colorado, one of the first states that legalized for recreational use, did see an uptick in DUIs, so driving under the influence, and specifically 48% for those who were given a citation or arrested for marijuana use while driving. So those are some of the things that we have to think about. And then finally, making sure that we are being cognizant of not usurping or undermining really good public health policies that are already in place, specifically when it comes to tobacco, which is also an issue of smoking in shared and common spaces. So that's what I wanted to share today. So I just want to go back to the chat and say shalom, Chief Yuya. Give thanks for joining the live. Shalom, Kashia. I'll ask like if there are any questions. That'll be great. You can ask questions, but if not, please feel free to put them in the chat, and I'll definitely make sure to get back to them later. Also, keep your eyes and ears open for this topic to be discussed further on the True Health Live podcast. And you can follow us at True Health Live on Instagram and Facebook and Twitter. You can also follow Deidre Sully. Same thing on all platforms on Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter. And to catch more of the lives and see more of the blog posts that are put out, please visit the website www.deidresully.com, and that's where we hold we hold all of the podcasts in addition to all of the major podcasting stations. You can find True Health Live, but you can also find it on the website. And then the videos are not only on the Deidre Sully YouTube channel, but they are also connected to blog posts. So stay tuned for the next blog post to come out, and when we'll go live next. I don't know what we're going to talk about next, but probably something. It's going to be something good. But I wanted to make sure that we came out on 420 and talked about everybody's favorite bud. So without further ado, I'm going to close. Give thanks for everyone who joined. If you find this video later, please feel free to reach out if you have any questions. I'm a public health expert in policy and advocacy, which is exactly how we got here, right, with the weed, because you might be thinking, well, what happened to the war on drugs? And I thought it was illegal. But that's what advocates do. They're able to change the narrative on a given topic. And so that's what we've seen happen over the years. The narrative about marijuana has been changed. And so here we are. So thanks again. Please make sure you click that subscribe button. So that's our call to action. Remember to follow, save, share, and subscribe. And visit us on the website at www.deidresully.com. And you can find us on all of the social media platforms at Deidre Sully or at True Health Live. Peace. Thanks for joining.